Inadmissible is the story of thousands of immigrants in Canada who came looking for a safe place where to raise a family and redo their lives. Hello. I am going to walk you through the ordeal the Figueroa family has been put through during more than 17 years of living in Canada. I am sure that one way or another you will relate to the story of this family. These are Jose and Ivania Figueroa. They arrived at the Canadian border at CIC Douglas Point of Entrance, in White Rock, BC, on April 25, 1997. They made a refugee claim which was received by an immigration officer on that day. Immediately after receiving the application, Jose and Ivania were sent back to the USA to wait for an appointment set up for May 6, 1997. Immigration officials would communicate Jose and Ivania if their claim was going to be heard by the Immigration Board or not. They were found to be admissible and their claim was going to be heard by the Immigration and Refugee Board. Jose and Ivania were authorized to enter Canada, and were given documents so they could apply for work permits. I think that it is important to stress the fact that Jose and Ivania were authorized to enter Canada on May 6, 1997. They have been legally working in Canada and paying taxes. They made their home in the city of Langley, where they have been living ever since. Once they found a place where to live, they applied for a work permit, and their son was born in August. Come with me and learn more about the Figueroas. We are in 300 West Georgia in Vancouver. The Immigration and Refugee Board heard the Figueroas' refugee claim in this building in 1999. In May 2000, the Immigration Board decided that due to the political changes in El Salvador, they didn't believe that Jose and Ivania were in danger of being returned, so the IRB decided that they were not convention refugees. Jose and Ivania started the process of appealing that decision immediately. While the Immigration and Refugee Board decision was being appealed, Jose Ivan was diagnosed with autism in 2002. The Figueroas then decided to also make an application for permanent residence on humanitarian grounds. Come with me to another place in this very same building so I can tell you what happened next. On March 13, 2003, an officer who was assessing both the appeal of the negative refugee claim and the humanitarian application made a decision, but because there was a risk assessment claim, he decided to defer it until the risk assessment was done. An important fact in 2003 when these applications were being assessed is that the Canadian Border Service Agency, the CBSA, was not created until December 12, 2003. Before going on with this story, let me flash back some months before the CBSA was created. On August 27, 2003, the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service, CSIS, received a report from an officer in Vancouver, alleging that Jose was inadmissible for he was a member of the FMLN. Do you remember the deferred decision by an officer on March 13, 2003? Well, on December 30, 2003, that assessment was assigned to an officer of the PRRA unit. Jose and his wife didn't need to file a risk assessment application. I think that now, I am heading to the most interesting parts of this story. The newly created CBSA, and the CIC, received the report from CSIS alleging that Jose was inadmissible for being a member of the FMLN. An enforcement officer from the CBSA tries to schedule an interview with Jose to question him about his membership with FMLN, but in the end, that CBSA officer who didn't believe Jose was a security risk decided to wait until a decision was made in the risk assessment. As a matter of fact, on his report of April 30, 2004, he wrote several statements that should be highlighted. The first one is, brief does not contain evidence to support a 34 or 35 IRPA allegation. The brief the CBSA officer is referring to, is the brief sent by the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service, on January 25, 2004. A second very important statement from this officer, that I think that should be pointed out to the Minister of Public Safety is this: file review of the case indicates a good candidate for ministerial relief if reported for Section 34 of IRPA. I wonder what would have happened if the CBSA officer had had the chance to interview Jose when he was trying to The statements I have referred to gives us a good idea of what would have happened if he had had the chance to assess the case. Esmeralda was born in March 2004. The officer in charge of the risk assessment made two decisions. On July 12, 2004, she decided to approve in principle the application for permanent residency based on humanitarian grounds. What this meant for Jose and Ivania was that they were just steps away from becoming permanent residents. Jose and Ivania got the news of the two decisions made by the PRRA officer on July 20, 2004. The Figueroas were given the news of a negative risk assessment and the positive humanitarian grounds application. They were never informed of the allegation in the brief from the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service. The two entities from Immigration, the Canadian Border Service Agency, and Citizenship and Immigration Canada, started to work in two different directions on Jose's case. The CBSA trying to start an admissibility process, and the CIC trying to finalize the landing of the Figueroas. Before I forget, let me tell you something else about that CBSA officer who was trying to interview Jose at the beginning of 2004. At the same time he was trying to question Jose about his membership with the FMLN, he was also interviewing another member of FMLN, Salvador Montoya. Oddly, he wrote a report to the then Minister of Public Safety, Anne McClellan. Montoya was brought to an admissibility hearing months after the interview with the CBSA officer. You would wonder why this officer wrote a report for Montoya but didn't write one for Jose. The reason is quite simple. The positive decision on the humanitarian application made in July 12, 2004, became a shield for the family. Because of this, CBSA was not able to start an admissibility process for Jose. What did CBSA do? The permanent resident application on humanitarian grounds was stalled at the security screening process. Meanwhile, Citizenship and Immigration Canada continued requesting documents from Jose and Ivania to finalize the HNC application for permanent residency. Did the Canadian Border Service Agency inform Jose about the inadmissibility issue? The answer to that is no. Ruby is born in May 2007. The last time Citizenship and Immigration Canada sent a request for documents to Jose and Ivania was around July 2007. The Canadian Security and Intelligence Service was starting to get quite annoyed about the constant requests for security clearances for Jose by CIC and CBSA officers. On January 17, 2008, CSIS sends an updated brief report to Vancouver enforcement officers. That updated brief report was simply a copy of the report CSIS had received on August 27, 2003. The officer who received that brief report in January 17, 2008, was the same officer who received the report in January 25, 2004. Well, the Director of Enforcement sat on this report for a whole year, before assigning it to an officer. I need to highlight that the date on the memo sent to Vancouver is erroneously marked as January 17, 2007. The content of the memo talks about an update sent by CSIS on August 14, 2007. Therefore, the only logical explanation is that it was a typing mistake. The update was sent on January 17, 2008. The new officer who was assigned to start an inadmissibility hearing for Jose had a total different view on the case than the enforcement officer in 2004. Nevertheless, he showed no concerns that Jose was a security threat. He sat on the file for a whole year. He got off the file only when a senior program officer from the counterterrorism section put some stress on the memo she had sent to Vancouver on January 17, 2008. The directive from the senior program officers was to bring Jose to an admissibility hearing before the Immigration Division, because he had been found inadmissible into Canada under Section 34.1 of the IRPA. He started to collect information on Jose's the file to comply with what he had been requested to do. On July 6, 2009, the enforcement officer from the CBSA scheduled an interview with Jose. This interview was the same one that had been cancelled by the other officer in 2004. He asked Jose about his membership with the FMLN. On July 7, 2009, the CBSA officer wrote and signed the report to the minister to start the admissibility process. I wonder, Why didn't Jose have a meaningful opportunity to argue the allegation? Jose knew for the first time about the admissibility issue when the Minister of Public Safety was Victos. Please visit www.wearejose.org to learn more about this important issue. Please consider to help We Are Jose to be able to keep making this presentations, and in the struggle to keep the family reunited in Canada. Hope to see you again.